Hey everyone, welcome to Business Unchained, where entrepreneurs and business owners come together to power up on their journey to greatness.
Bobby Mascia is the founder and CEO of Greenridge Wealth Planning. All opinions expressed by Bobby and his guests are solely their own and do not reflect the opinion of Greenridge Wealth Planning. This podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be relied upon for any financial decisions. Clients of Greenridge Wealth Planning may maintain positions in any securities discussed in this podcast.
Today we have a lot of media going on and you have to have your best face on.
Oh yeah.
And when you're going to be training people to become a better person, there's got to be some drive to wanting to do that. But what was it that got into that industry, that segment of the industry?
Yeah, it was, like I said, when I saw someone else having that kind of effect on people, when I saw Billy and I saw others who were just making the entire room feel different and giving them strategies and tools to be able to really help them grow personally, professionally, I saw the effect and I knew that I had the skill set to do that. I knew that that was my zone of genius. I knew that just from what people were sharing with me, Bobby, like, you get people giving you that feedback, like, wow, you really helped me. Wow, you explained that in a way no one else has ever explained that to me. And I realized, okay, that's my wheelhouse. Let me just keep nurturing those seeds and keep growing and growing, growing in that space. And it ended up being that's where I knew I could make the greatest impact because I kept seeing it over and over and over again. But you're right, it does take a lot out of you. You have to be at your very best. So I always, as I do with my clients too, I make sure that I have that time to recharge and allow for myself to have that time to reset and then get back being on again.
So other than Billy, there wasn't something that goes deeper into how you were brought up, or maybe somebody who you didn't get the coaching along the way or the training along the way and it inspired you. It was just simply being in the right spot and saying, you know what? I can relate to that. I can connect with that. That is my zone of genius. I want to do that.
Well, what really kicked things off for me was something that happened way before. So this was 11 years ago now, where I was in a rut. I was not happy. I was really stuck and I was the time of my life, I'd say I was on autopilot. Like I didn't have any direction. I didn't have any idea of what I wanted to do. And then out of nowhere, I received a phone call from my mother who told me that my father had a heart attack and it was unexpected and just sudden.
And he was young.
He was young. He was only 55.
Yeah.
Not sick, Bobby. He wasn't like there was something wrong with him. There wasn't like any signs that something like this could happen. And he passed away before I even got to the hospital. And that woke me up to my mortality. I started asking myself, what am I doing with my life? How am I going to make an impact on the world, knowing that it could end any time? My father had plans, Bobby. Like he started working at a new furniture retailer. He worked for Bob's Furniture as a sales manager, just got a new location and was so excited about it. He called me the week before saying like how he could approach this new place. It's a bigger group.
You were close with your dad. Did you work with him at some point?
We never worked in the same building, but we worked for the same company.
Okay.
He had some issues because years ago he ran his own business. It was embroidery, it was lace and that kind of thing. And much of that business went overseas. So he lost his business. And so he went through his own chapter of just struggling to figure out what's next. But he was always good with people. He was always good managing people. Mm-hmm. He used to always quote that famous Teddy Roosevelt quote. He used to say, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. Mm-hmm. That was one of the most valuable insights he ever imparted on me. And he would say it all the time. So he was just great with people. So when I started working at Bob's Discount Furniture when I was in college, I said, hey, maybe you can start here. And he started working there. So we would talk about, over the weekends, how we can both improve, and we would brainstorm on how to be. So you had
a tight relationship.
Yeah, we had a pretty tight relationship. Just like any relationship though, Bobby, some ups and downs.
Well, if there's not ups and downs.
Yeah, there were times where we definitely didn't click, especially when I was younger, right? But I think the real major change was when I became a father. Then it was like, okay, we both see the world from the same lens now. I didn't see it the way he saw it.
I feel that way every couple of years. I can relate to my father a little bit more and more. I lost my father 3 years ago. And, there's so many times when while he was still alive, and I would say to him, remember when such and such, which could have been a monumental moment for me, but to him was just another day in the life of. And he'd be like, he'd either say, yeah, I remember that, or no, I don't really remember that. And I'd say, well, I'm sorry. I get what you were trying to do. I get what you were talking about. And he'd be like, well, thank you for that. And most of the time it was just like, kids, we've all been there. It's part of life. Like, I knew that this moment would come for you soon enough, but
yeah, I get it.
But it's funny how that happens, right?
Yeah, because you don't know what a father is really experiencing until you become one. You don't really get it. And I started
you
to
acting
get
like you know, but you don't know.
Right. And so it was only 2 years, Bobby. Like, my daughter was 2 when my father passed away. So it was those last 2 years where we were starting to get a lot closer.
Mhm.
And that's also part of what is so sad about it, is that I didn't get that chance to keep cultivating that relationship. So what it really woke me up was, I need to do something different. And I started to really work on myself. I started to read every book and get my hands. I became obsessed with personal development and spiritual development. I found mindfulness. I was not a self-aware person. I was not someone who had any emotional intelligence at all. But I found that this was a path to being able to be peaceful and at ease while still being fueled with ambition. I was not someone who was going to sit on a couch and meditate all day either. And I'm not someone like that now. But I feel like those kind of things have helped me to be able to be grounded and present, especially with the people who I love the most, and while continuing to strive to achieve things that I never earlier in my life thought I could ever achieve.
So when you felt stuck in that moment, you decided to make a conscious effort to change the path in which you were headed. What were some of the things that were going through your mind that you had to battle through as you started to get onto this new path?
One of the things that I've struggled with quite a bit was people pleasing. That was always an issue for me. I was always very fearful of people's rejection. I was always fearful of what other people thought of me. And it's something that has taken a lot of work. I always tell people I'm a recovering people pleaser. It's not like it goes away completely. What I had to learn was to be able to recognize whatever someone else thinks of me, I have no control over that anyway. My old mentor once said to me, he said, no matter what you do, Jay, a third of people are going to like you, a third of people are not going to like you, and a third of people are not going to really care about you at all. Like, no matter what you do.
That's true.
It's true, right?
It's true.
Why am I putting so much of my attention and energy into getting a little bit more into that 1/3 of people who like me? And so it's work that I had to do over time. And I'd say that that was a hindrance for me, especially when I wanted to pursue new things and take on a new challenge. Leave first was a finance company that looked like it had this nice future, and start working at this renewable energy company named Solar City, where I'm going to start over kind of in a new career. I heard it from my mother. I heard it from friends. What are you, crazy? You're a manager at this job. Keep going. I took that challenge. I had to let go of what people thought of me. Then growing within Tesla, I had to keep that going. And then starting my own business. This was now 6 years ago. I heard the same echoes, the same thing. Don't do it. Be safe. Play it safe. And I had to keep pushing myself to be able to get out of my own comfort zone. And I feel like that is something that helped me tremendously.
How'd you deal with that in the moment? Like, what are some of the things that you did in the moment to just kind of, because I can relate to that 100%.
Yeah.
And I think that there's a lot of people who can relate to being a people pleaser, to feeling like they have a hard time maybe saying no, overextending themselves, as well as the emotional piece of, I want them to like me a little bit more. What is it that I need to do?
Yeah.
How did you deal with that?
I feel like the thing that made all the difference was being able to observe whatever comes up with detachment. So in other words, there's an emotion that comes up in the body.
Mm-hmm.
It's, when you really break it down, it's just a raw sensation in the body. It's just something that you feel within your body. You immediately then add a story to it. Oh my God, what are they going to think of me? I'm not good enough. I don't belong. Okay. What the years and years of practicing mindfulness and meditation and being able to observe these things has helped me to create is a space between whatever comes up and my ability to look at it. So in the moment, I notice it immediately and I observe it, and I don't react to it. I don't suppress it. I don't push it down. I don't argue with it. I just notice whatever comes up, and I approach it with a lot of respect, a lot of kindness, and a lot of self-compassion. That's a hard thing to do, especially for people like us who are very high achievers, ambitious people. Bobby, I know you are. You want to be hard on yourself. You want to push it down. You want to tell yourself, no, push through it, right? But what I've learned is to treat it the way I would treat the people I love the most in the world. The way I would treat my daughter is how I should be treating myself, which is with a great deal of respect and honoring it and having a lot of compassion. So in the moment, That's how I choose to respond to it. I don't immediately believe whatever comes up in my mind. I observe it, and then I have a little bit of a conversation with it. Well, is that true? Is this helpful right now? Is this the only way to see it? Are there other ways I can look at it? And that space is what's allowed for me to not be so reactive to when that natural conditioning pops up of, I want everyone to like me.
Do you find that most people have that initial self-awareness, but they don't know how to have that communication with self? Or do you find that most people need to start to train themselves around that self-recognition?
I think it's the latter, which is people are not able to recognize it with detachment. They are just fueled by it.
So they have this visceral reaction that they put into story or some sort of theme in their mind. And that's when it spirals and gets out of control.
Exactly. And then they don't recognize it until it's way downstream. So in order, think of it like a river, right? So we have a river where we're really downstream, meaning we waited until it got really rocky and wavy. And now we're in this terrible spot after we've reacted poorly and we made some bad decisions. What we need to do is work upstream, get a little more recognition of it earlier on. I sometimes use the analogy. It's like, okay, imagine you're walking into a lake, okay? And you walk into the lake and now you're all the way covered, right? Your head is under the water. And then you realize you're in the lake, okay? It's kind of late, right? Yeah. So what they need to do, and what I found has helped me, is commit to practices that allow for you to recognize it sooner. So when you have something like mindfulness in your life, when you're practicing day in and day out, observing the present moment without judgment, and you keep that practice going, what ends up happening is you walk into the lake and now you're neck deep and you realize, oh, wait, I'm in the lake here. I need to start going back. Then it's chest deep. Then it's belly button deep. Then it's knee deep. And then it gets to a point where your ankles are in the water, meaning you've been triggered by something, but you noticed it a lot earlier. And I feel like with most people, it's not something that comes natural. Because what's natural, Bobby, is for us to fall into negative bias thinking about the worst things. It's our primal reaction to things. That is our programming, our conditioning.
It's like a survival mechanism. Always.
It's a survival mechanism.
And we don't have as many threats anymore. So now we have to learn how to manage and deal with it.
And the key word there is to learn. We have to learn. So with that, it requires practice. We can't learn just by thinking about it. We have to, in the moment, like you asked me, have a different response. And if you do that enough, it ends up being like building a new muscle where every day you do a bicep curl, right? You're doing it, your biceps are going to get bigger. In the same way, every day when you recognize it and you respond differently, you're creating new neural pathways in your brain. And now you're not reacting the way you used to.
So people pleasing is something that you've kind of mastered, right? And your biggest focus is getting people unstuck.
Yeah.
I can only assume that's one way of getting yourself unstuck, is to start to have that self-awareness and acknowledge when you need to come out of that spiral or come out of that lake and get back to the coastline.
Yeah.
What do you see most people struggling with? Is it that, or are there multiple things that kind of hit the checklist on why people get stuck in where they are?
What is oftentimes the case is that people are not committing to the activities that give them the focus and energy and a sense of well-being. And so I hear this a lot. People say, oh, I'm burning out because of work. I'm burning out. And they blame it on the amount of demand that they have at work. So they say, oh, I just have so much on my plate and it's becoming overwhelming. My challenge to that person is to not think about how do I get this off of my plate, but how do I commit to the activities that give me the fuel to be able to take on all that demand? So in other words, think of it like this. Your cell phone has all this incredible capability. It can run all these different apps. You can have your navigation going, your email, it could do all these amazing things. But if the battery is dead, it's quite useless, isn't it? Now, when you run a lot of those apps, you need to charge it more, right? You need to put it on the charger a little bit more because you're running more. But it still can handle that capacity. So you need to be sure that you're plugging it in and charging it. In the same way, what happens when people tell me they're stuck is because they're not charging. It's because they're not doing the things that give them the energy and the fuel and the clarity they need. So I want to start with, what are the things that you're not doing that you need to start doing, versus let's look at all the things that you are doing and try to remove things. First, what are the activities that give you that sense of energy? And usually there are common themes. for me, for example, years ago, I just wasn't eating healthy. I wasn't drinking enough water. I wasn't sleeping well. I wasn't exercising when I felt really stuck many years ago. I wasn't exercising. I had no practices at all for my own psychological and emotional well-being. And I was...
Well, you were stuck in a space.
Exactly.
Right.
But I wasn't doing the things that gave me the ability to take on the demand. If anything, all those things were continuing to drain me more.
Well, because you're always going to have a full plate.
Right.
You may take things off, but things are consistently going to be added on. And it's not a matter of how quickly or how efficiently you can clean that plate. It's to your point. It's how do you find the energy to keep the momentum, the positive energy throughout the day, as opposed to feeling like you're always playing catch up because you're already coming into the day drained to start with.
Yeah.
Right.
It's like, how do you get a larger plate? It's like your plate, you feel like, oh, it's so much stuff is on the plate. Well, your plate's small. Get a bigger plate. How do you get a bigger plate? Is that you start doing the things that give you the energy to be able to take on more. Yeah, add more to the plate. I can handle it. Like, I'm not someone, for example, right? Practice mindfulness. I'm someone who really believes in it. I have a busy schedule, Bobby. Like, I have a lot going on. I travel. I got meetings all day long. But every day I don't feel drained. I don't feel burnt out because I am committing to the things that allow for me to take on that demand.
I would say that I've struggled with this to various degrees over the years, because my biggest thing is I just keep getting a bigger plate. Whenever I have this moment to where I'm going, I'm feeling a little bored, should take on another project. And and I end up becoming overwhelmed because of the amount of things that I end up taking on, and it becomes self-induced.
Yeah.
Do you see a lot of that?
Well, I do see where it can be a pattern of it's never enough. So I need to keep adding and keep going and keep going and keep going. So there may be something there in being able to be tap into more acceptance of what is. Like the chase, in other words, is what we sometimes get really fueled by. And I know I have that quality of wanting more and it being something that I feel can give me a sense of wholeness, right? And I want more. So the practice for me has been, can I stay grounded in what it is that I have and be grateful for all of it? Can I be grounded in saying, hey, everything I have right now is enough. Like, this is enough. And whatever I'm choosing is just what I'm choosing next. Like, think of it like two people climbing a mountain. The first person who wants to climb a mountain says, hey, I want to climb that mountain because I need to, because that's where I get my sense of worth. And that's going to make me feel whole. So I'm going to climb that mountain. The person's not going to enjoy the climb. They're going to be thinking about every step, thinking, when am I going to get to the top of that mountain? But a second person climbs the same mountain and says, I really am happy and content as I am. That looks like a fun challenge. Yeah. Let me go ahead and climb that mountain.
What a great day.
What a great day. Great way to celebrate my life is climbing that mountain. And he's going to enjoy every step on that climb. And then when he gets to the top of that mountain, he's going to say, this was fun. All right, what's the next one? Whereas that first person, they're going to feel elated. Yes, I climbed the mountain. But then immediately the anxiety is going to hit them. They're going to say, well, what's my next mountain?
That's right.
So we want to be like the second person. We don't want to approach our goals by saying, I need that in order to feel happy. Instead, approach each one with, hey, this is a fun way to celebrate life.
So you yourself were found that you were getting stuck. Dad passes away, 55 years old. You're in the space, not working out, not eating healthy, and you are consuming as much information as you can on just self-improvement.
Yeah.
Take us back down that story. So we can hear a little bit more about how you started to etch your voice and how you view your role in helping people.
So I remember the first book that I got was Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. It's right here.
Yeah, I got one of those. I think that's the most sold book after the Bible.
Is it really?
That's like crazy.
I'm not surprised. It was the first book I read. And then it kept going. And I remember I read Awaken the Giant Within, Tony Robbins. I read that book, which is pretty thick. It's like 580 pages.
He doesn't put out a short read.
No, he does not. But I finished it in 2 days. I finished that book in 2 days. I remember it was a summer.
So you got good energy from it.
I just was obsessed and I just read it through. And you mentioned the Bible. I also became incredibly interested in religion as well. And I was working at that finance company, Gain Capital. And during my lunch breaks, I'd have a Bible with me and I'd be reading the Bible. I was curious about everything. I read the Bible. I read the Quran. I read all these different books about different religious figures in the past. So it was religion. It was personal development. It was all these things. I was just becoming super obsessed with all of it.
What was it about the religion that got your attention?
Well, for one, it was knowing that my life could end at any time.
So you were trying to connect with that spirituality of, life is short. What is my purpose? What is my meaning? Where have other people found purpose? Where have other people found meaning? Was that the quest or?
The question that was on my mind, what's the truth? That's what I kept asking. What's the truth about all
You
this?
can't handle the truth.
But you know what I mean? Like, what's the truth about life? What's the truth about what happens after we die? What's the truth about the meaning of life and the purpose of life? I wanted to understand the truth. And I figured if I just continued every day to read everything I could about what other people have said is the truth, sooner or later, it's going to come to me. And I can tell you that throughout this entire journey that I've been on, that question is still one that's on my mind. But instead, I fuel it with recognition. I think that the truth is that we all have truths. In other words, there isn't one truth. There are multiple truths. And you have to decide on what your truth is and just stick with it and commit to it. That's, I think, what I found in my journey. And so reading about religion, reading about personal development, I remember there was a book I read that, I don't remember the name of it now, but they were recommending meditation. I said, that's not for me. Well, I'm going to sit there for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, and just do nothing?
Mm-hmm.
Not with my energy, man. That's not going to happen,
It's
right?
tough.
Yeah.
It's not easy.
It's not easy. So I just said, no, I'm not going to do that. But then another book recommended it, and then another book. And I'm like, okay, fine. Let me give this a shot. And to this day, it's the greatest game changer in my life.
So let me ask you about meditation.
Yeah.
What is it that you do for meditation?
I follow the most simple, boring Zen practice that's out there. So there's a lot of different ways people can meditate, right? You can put the headphones in and you can listen to the music and you can have somebody guide you through it, which is fine. It's no judgment. My style is I just sit and I observe my breathing. I observe it going in. I observe it going out. If I find that my mind is racing quite a bit, I'll count. So it'll be breath in, breath out, 1, in, out 2, up till 10. And then I start back at 1 and I go up again. And then if my mind is settling, it's called shikantaza, which is a Zen style of meditation, where I just sit and I just observe whatever comes up. I watch a thought, I feel a sensation, I hear a bird chirping, and I just observe it. And I just do that for 10 minutes or so. On certain days, I maybe go to 20. Certain days, I only do 5. I'm not super regimented like other people. Like, the gurus out there, you have to follow a strict schedule every morning. And this. For some people, that works. It doesn't work for me. I like to have a little bit more flexibility. So every day could change, but I do commit to it most days. On weekends, holidays, things I may not. But most days, I am committing to it.
I always found it stressful to manage my breath, even yoga. Somebody was like, you should try yoga. So I go and I try yoga, middle afternoon. It's a bunch of women and me. And I'm trying to just keep up. I'm on a pose that is the prior pose to what the instructor yelled out. And now she's on to the next pose. And I'm stressing out about getting into the next mode. I'm like, do I have my feet right? Do I have my hands right? I said, fuck this. I'm not doing this shit, right? And that same thing I was experienced through meditation where, I was getting more stressed out about keeping with the breathing. And I was trying to really empty my thoughts and clear myself. And I was even did some guided meditation with a coach of mine. And we had Mo Wadwani on. He was one of the first season guys. And he's a buddy of mine. And he owns this company called Athleta Freak. And Mo was like, I don't mess with the breathing. I just sit in silence. If a thought comes up, I think of it like a balloon. And I just visualize the scissor snipping the line and the thought kind of goes away. And every time I come to a thought, it's almost like the way I release my mind of thinking about anything. I gave that a shot. And it's to your point, to stay regimented, I think that takes a lot of muscle development. I don't think many people can go from, or maybe it's just me, I don't know, can go from I don't meditate to now I've got this formal, strict regimen of meditating.
I agree.
Do you find that to be common people or?
Yes, I agree 100% that you shouldn't jump into it where I'm now committing to 20 minutes a day, 7 days a week, because you're going to set yourself up for discouragement and disappointment. I would follow what you would learn from James Clear in Atomic Habits.
Mm-hmm.
Treat it the same way. Start small. Do 2 minutes. Just do 2 minutes. We can sit for 2 minutes. And that's what I do with my clients whenever I'm working with somebody who told me that, they never meditated or always had struggle with it. I tell them start small, 2 minutes. That's it. You don't even have to do it every day. Just do 2 minutes as many days as you can. Set a target for yourself. Share it with me so I have some accountability. But 2 minutes is enough. And then you build it. You can then expand to 5. But even the research shows you don't want to be doing even more. 20 to 30 minutes. At that point, there isn't too much more additional benefit you get after 20 to 30 minutes, unless you're doing like a full retreat.
Yeah, you get diminishing results.
Exactly. So, 10 minutes is plenty of time. But I do really like that example of the balloon. And I do feel like people have to find what works for them.
Yeah.
For me, at times, what really works is I just bring my attention to my hearing and just listen. And just, that's my anchor. It's not breath, it's hearing. Other people, it's just, what do I feel in my body? So you have to test out certain ones. Every human being is unique. You got to know what works for you. And if it's a visualization like a balloon, I've heard clouds before. Cars in the road is another one people do, like, seeing cars in the road. But one thing I would say, Bobby, is it's important to not approach it where you're trying to quiet the mind, because then you're in a battle and it becomes stressful.
Yeah, it becomes stressful.
Exactly.
Yep.
So instead I'm just watching whatever's coming up and just being all right with it.
So Jay, you're in this quest, reading religion, trying to get the answer of, the existential question of who am I? Why are we here? What happens next? You start meditating. I took you down a tangent after that. Keep it going.
Where is my career going to go? And so I was at a Starbucks one day, I remember, and I was Googling different industries where I felt like I could make an impact and do something meaningful. I read about the renewable energy industry and how there was a lot of opportunity there. So I started reading up about different companies and, reading about Elon Musk, who very different portrayal of him back then there is now, right? But back then he was doing all these amazing things with Tesla and with Solar City, because he was chairman of Solar City, I believe. And so I said, okay, this may be a good opportunity for me to start something new. And so I made it my mission to join that industry. And I had to start as a salesperson. And then it became, okay, how can I be the best salesperson I can possibly be? So then it was studying communication and learning how to effectively influence people in a way that's not, manipulative, but rather relationship based. Mm-hmm. So I became really equipped in how to effectively communicate well. I had a lot of success as a salesperson. Then the opportunity for me to become a manager appeared. That's when I was asked to join a training in Las Vegas and observe the regional sales manager training run by our friend Billy Salibi.
Yep.
And that's when I knew that training was right for me, just by seeing the way in which they were able to interact and make positive change amongst this group. I just knew I could do it. So then I joined the training team. Then the training team led to a lot of promotions within Tesla. Then I was running a national training program there. And that's something.
So I can imagine the communications part of learning how to sell translated pretty well over to the training, because you were able to relate to people. How did you take that from a one-to-one to a group setting?
Well, I think that what I found was that people love stories. And when you can be able to communicate a lesson through a story, it was always something that made it where it was retained, whatever is the information. So I was realizing that through my one-on-one conversations, whether it was sales or when I'm coaching somebody, to, okay, how do I scale that into a large group setting? So somebody would ask me, okay, we need a training on how to handle objections or something like that, right? Well, if I can bring that into some sort of story, if I can find a way to make it interesting and entertaining, then it would be retained and we would see positive improvements. So I think really cultivating the power of storytelling became something that I was really interested in. And I do it now as a speaker. I'm always telling stories. I'm always using analogy. I'm always using metaphor, because it's the way in which I think people really learn. So I think that along with some of the nonverbal stuff, being able to hold a room through effective eye contact, through being able to really move and use my body in a way that really kept people engaged. And I feel like that's even more important today because our attention spans are getting shorter and shorter and shorter.
Shorter and shorter and shorter.
Right. So we have to captivate people.
Everything's got to be a soundbite.
Yeah.
If you don't have it within that clip, you've gone too far.
Yeah. And I know you probably see it, right? At times you have people who are unaware of how long they're going. And they're continuing to explain things, and you lose people. But there's research that just came out about.
They get super excited. People get super excited about what their message is or what they have to say.
Yeah.
And it's really easy to get lost in yourself. How do you deal with that?
For me, it's that thing we were talking about earlier, self-awareness. If I can watch myself as I am speaking with you, I'm going to be able to notice some of the cues. I'm going to be noticing if I'm going a little too far. I'm going to be noticing if I'm over-explaining. So I feel like that practice of cultivating self-awareness is not just so we can find more peace and happiness and fulfillment. I think that if people are wanting to, whether that's an entrepreneur who wants to grow a business or someone who's in corporate who wants to have a better career, you got to be good you have to be a good communicator.
Yeah.
And the research that I recently read really hit home on that. It was about 2 years ago now, where they said the way in which people perceive someone who's confident is very heavily based on how short their sentences are. So someone who can explain an idea in a succinct way is perceived as more confident than someone who explains it over 2 paragraphs
and more competent.
Yeah, they're perceived as more competent and more confident.
So you're training these people. You're at Solar City. You've got your dream job with Billy Boy, and how did you end up leaving that and going on your own?
So, they always say people don't leave their jobs; they leave their managers. Well, I had this incredible journey of working under great leaders at Tesla. I had some amazing people, and until I didn't, which was they made some changes and they brought on a new leader, and this person was someone I could not get on the same page with. And I tried. I made the attempts. I even coach my clients now. I say to them, don't just jump ship. Do your best to work with this leader. Do your best to give them the feedback. Do your best to really work with them before you decide, hey, this is no longer for me. But if you've done that, which I did, and it's no longer going to work, the relationship you have with your manager is the most important relationship you're ever going to have in a corporate world. So that's when I decided that chapter had to come to a close. And so that's when I left. And then from there, I didn't know what was next. So I had a lot of people reaching out to me. I had CEOs taking me out to lunch. I had people who wanted to have me join and be their head of sales or their head of sales training or their head of training, whatever it was. Bobby, everywhere I went, man, it was like, not this. My intuition was screaming from in my gut, not this, not this. I can't. No, nothing felt right.
Now, was it because you felt like you were getting shackled to something different, or did you feel that there just wasn't the connection of your ideology of how you thought you could put an imprint on the world? What was it, if you were to go back and try to translate what that gut intuition was telling you?
It's hard for me to say exactly what it was. In retrospect, I feel like there was something within me that just knew that I needed to build something on my own.
So you had the Field of Dreams moment.
Yeah. I had that moment of like, there's nothing anyone could offer me where if I had to build their dream, I didn't want to build anybody else's dream anymore. And I say that with the mindfulness of the fact that there are some people who work in corporate and that's the right fit for them. And that's awesome if that's the right fit for them. But for many of us, it gets to a point where you're like, you are building someone else's dream in a corporate world. And I wanted to build something more meaningful that I felt was a message that I wanted to share with the world, even though I didn't know exactly what it was.
I was going to say, at that point, what was your dream?
I didn't know, but I knew.
Do you know now?
Yeah.
Have you figured it out?
I feel like I figured it out, at least for this
for now. Yeah.
Of my life, because it's going to change, right? It was something 5 years ago. It's something now, and 5 years from now, it's going to be different. And that's the beauty of it all. You don't know where it's going to take you. And so I remember I was this was a Barnes & Noble. I did a lot of my work at coffee shops.
Yeah.
So I'm at a Barnes & Noble, man. And I remember I'm like a little frustrated because nothing feels right. Nothing feels right. And I remember really feeling this sense of letting go, saying, I'm done trying to figure this out on my own. I'm just going to let the universe tell me what's next because I can't figure this out. Something's going to happen. I trust it. And I'm putting my hands in the air and saying, universe, show me whatever you got to show me. And I'm going to listen.
Isn't it amazing how they say if you tell the universe will answer? But the opposite is also true. If you don't say anything and you just be patient, it's amazing how many things come your way.
You're absolutely right. Because what happened was a few days later, someone I worked with at Tesla reaches out and says, Jay, I need some help. I'm starting a business. I can use someone to come in and do some consulting for me. And I go, all right. So I start helping. And then that leads to another opportunity to consult for a larger company where they wanted me to come in and design their sales training and be able to create their onboarding process. So I start doing that on a consulting basis. And then the pandemic hit. Okay. So everything kind of got shut down. And I realized that if I am going to build something, it has to be virtual. And I was building a little bit of a presence on LinkedIn and people were asking me for advice on things. So I realized, you know what? Let me start making this a one-on-one coaching business. Let's see where it goes. And there, of course, I made a lot of mistakes, Bobby. I didn't do it all perfectly. But over time, it built into a business that was really sustainable for me and being able to do things on my time, all virtual. And so building out this coaching business then led to what you were saying a moment ago, right? I was starting to feel a little bored. Just about maybe 2 years ago, I was feeling a little bored because, you're looking at computer screens all day. It's nice and all to be able to help people. That was really meaningful, but I missed being around people. I missed that in-person part. So then I started to shift into, let me get back into speaking and being able to offer keynotes and workshops the way I used to at Tesla and the energy that comes with being in a room with people. And so that's been the latest shift for me. And that's what I've been really focusing on over the last 2 years is keynote speaking and workshops in combination with coaching. And so I feel like I have the right balance now where I'm not overloaded with traveling every day of the week, but enough to where I feel like I get that energy surge from being around people while still being able to have my time with my family.
It sounds like, I talk to a lot of people. I mean, we have a conversation and the pandemic comes up and it's just, I still have a hard time digesting that the entire world shut down for that period of time and how many people either got an opportunity to reinvent themselves, to redirect their businesses. So many people were able to turn that into a moment where their lives changed. Some for the worse, a lot for the better though. Do you deal with a lot of coaching around people who are coming into this from this like post-pandemic and there's residual effect of what that trauma brought? Or where do you see that playing into your conversations with people?
I feel like it was something for sure when it was happening that people were seeking out help. And the sense of, oh my God, all this uncertainty and the anxiety around what's going on, where there was an opportunity for me to really help people. And I guess in some ways, the pandemic was the signal that there is a need to be able to help people work through the unexpected.
I mean, it's a generational moment that I think a lot of us kind of go like, all right, we're past that, on to the next. But I think there's some deeper carnage that was left behind. I mean, I even think about my kids and the way that they had to interact with their friends and the schooling that they went through. Us as adults having to adapt to doing things online and not having that human interaction. And for some people, it was like, oh, huge unplug. That was fantastic. It's almost like a vacation I got to go on. Yeah. And for others, it was brutal.
Yeah, there's someone I'm working with right now where after the pandemic, his job shifted to fully remote and they stayed that way. And while some people say, oh, remote is great for me, this person that I am working with now has been in a really bad place for quite some time. And he feels like sometimes like I can't get out of bed. I feel really isolated. I feel really alone.
Yeah, there's some companies that still haven't come completely back to work. They're still grappling with that. How many days on, how many days off?
For him, it was all about losing human connection. And so the plan that he and I came up with was, how do you be more proactive in establishing that human connection, that social muscle that you feel like you haven't flexed in a while? And so creating a strategy for him to be able to be more engaged with people is what allowed for him to get unstuck. Like we think about, people say they're stuck. It's my manager, it's the job, it's this. Maybe it's just you're not engaging with people enough. Maybe you're not having enough social interaction. As human beings, this is a need for us. It's part of how we're wired to be able to engage people, even people who are introverts. Like people who are introverted might be listening and say, well, that doesn't apply to me. No, it applies to you too. You're human. Every human needs social interaction. So often, Bobby, the thing that I feel is the thing that's missing for people is just that. It is being engaged with people and having genuine, deep-rooted connection.
Where is it that you are doing your keynote speaking? Where is it that you find most of your audiences are there to listen to you? Are you traveling around for that? Are companies hiring you? Or are you going to like larger conferences?
A lot of the organizations that I work with are ones where there's a lot of high demand and constant change. So for organizations that feel like there is so much unknown that's coming, obviously there's a lot going on this year with what's going on in our federal government and a lot of the changes there. And it's creating a lot of this fear and uncertainty as to what's to come. So a lot of organizations are asking me to come in and in person oftentimes, but it could be virtual too. But if it's in person, it's always going to be more impactful to be able to come in and help people through these uncertain times and be able to establish or cultivate more resilience through it. And also associations at times ask me to come in and do a talk. So it's, an association where they are focusing on a certain area and they have different entrepreneurs or different corporate leaders that all come. They're part of one group and I come in and I'll speak with them. And then conferences are a third. And so, yeah, it's been really wonderful to connect with people and learn about different industries. But what I find is that what I learned at Tesla, that high-paced, chaotic environment, it applies to nearly every single industry. I mean, people are just like working crazy hours. There's so much changing, and the levers that we need to pull as human beings apply to every industry.
So I asked about the speaking because the biggest conversation around marketing that I've seen through a lot of channels are people who are really focusing on their personal brand. How have you been building out your personal brand so that this way your message is getting out to the right people?
Well, I feel LinkedIn has been a wonderful platform for me to be able to really showcase and communicate the kind of value that I'm bringing to organizations.
And you've got some, 50,000 followers close to?
Close to, yeah. It's 46,000. But it's just, I think LinkedIn is a wonderful platform in general. I think people are a little bit more...
It's less catty social and more consuming and sharing information.
Yeah, and I think people root for each other on the platform. Like I genuinely see that. I mean, not everyone. There's always going to be your trolls, right? But there's less of that trolling, less of that trying to show off your highlight reel on LinkedIn. And it's a little bit more about genuinely connecting and learning from one another, which is a wonderful place to be. So I found a lot of my branding, my marketing strategy has been through LinkedIn and then just having genuine conversations with people, Bobby. I think that, no matter what the business is, and I know that you have had a lot of success in business, it always comes down to the relationships that you have and the way in which you connect with people. And I feel like I've just done enough of that. I've done enough of that connection, genuine conversation, building of relationships.
You've done enough to where it's no longer you're training the muscle. It just happens naturally.
It's a natural approach. I've been doing this work now for over 6 years. I have not spent a single advertising dollar. Not one. I haven't had to. Everything I've built is organic. Everything I've built is through the social media channels and being able to meet one person who introduces me to another, just because I approach every one of those conversations, not with desperation, not because I'm trying to get something out of the person. I am genuinely curious about them. I am genuinely curious and learning about their needs. And I'll tell you, I have a lot of conversations where I say, it sounds like what you need is not anything at all related to what I do. And that's okay. Maybe I can introduce you to somebody. Maybe I can connect you to a different person. It happens all the time, but I just open myself up to those conversations and good things come from them.
Now, do you think about scalability at all in this business, or are you're just focusing on whoever I can help who's in front of me? I can't help everyone. It's difficult to scale. Or do you look at it and say, no. We're going to be scaling by touching people in multiple ways, and this is how we're going to do it?
That's a really good question. I think with where I'm at right now in the season of my business, I am totally okay with it being a bit more on that one-to-one level and being able to have enough opportunities to do the keynotes and the workshops and the coaching that I do, where I do have a team around me that helps me with all the other stuff that I don't have the time to do, the admin, the marketing, and all that kind of thing. And they're amazing. But I feel totally okay with it being right now me doing the work and the conversations that I'm having. I do see in the future needing to be able to then find ways in which I can scale. And so it's kind of
it's a tomorrow problem.
It's a tomorrow problem, but it's not something that I'm forgetting about. And for example, this year I have my TEDx coming out in September. I have a book that I'm going to be working on throughout the year.
Congratulations on that. That's awesome.
Thank you. And so my plan is for the TEDx and the book to come out together. So that way we have something that we're showing in regards to the messaging and a book that really does a deeper dive into that messaging. And then into next year, it's okay, scaling it from there. So definitely in the back of my mind, but not something I'm focusing so much on right now.
Well, and you have a podcast.
I do. Yeah. And so,
Unstuck.
Yes. Yeah.
And what are the types of guests that you have on and the types of conversations that you have? Do you thematically, like, what does the podcast sound like to other people?
So one of the things that I really avoided for many years was creating a podcast. I avoided it. I said, oh man, that sounds like too much work. I don't want to do that. But our friend Billy kept nagging me, Jay, you got to do it. You got to do a podcast. It's going to help. I promise you. I said, fine. All right. But if I am going to do it, I want to do it a little different. I want to do it where I can add my storytelling talent into the podcast. So how I formatted the podcast is every episode begins with a story, a real story of what someone's going through. I change some of the details because I want to protect people's anonymity, but I do pull it from real life, like people I've worked with, people who I've connected with who told me about their struggles. And I tell that story at the beginning of every episode. And then I bring on a special, a guest to be able to speak to the expertise related to the needs of that person in their story. So if the person is someone who has people-pleasing tendencies, I want to bring on a coach or a consultant or someone who does a lot of keynote speaking on how to overcome people-pleasing, for example. So I pair the story with the guest to be able to look at a real life problem and figure out how we would help this person through it.
Well, back to that whole adage that storytelling is the way that people learn. So why not use that in your podcast as opposed to just spewing out a whole bunch of information, right?
Yeah. It's also what keeps me engaged, where I get to tell a story. I get to craft a story. And the other thing that I've learned in podcasting, and I'm sure you experienced this too, Bobby, is I did not expect that one of the best things about podcasting was going to be what I got to learn from it. Like my guests are teaching me stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, and it's amazing how valuable that is. It's kind of selfish. Like I feel sometimes like pretty selfish as a podcast host because I'm like, I'm getting more out of this, I think, than anybody. But
well, I think Billy said at one point, he goes, you need to talk more. There's a lot more that you can share in your podcast. And at the same time he's saying this, I'm going, yeah, but I'm the one who's learning from them.
Yeah.
I just like talking to people, picking their brains, hearing what they have to say.
Yeah.
That becomes a different dynamic when the host starts to really jump in and, provide a lot of content.
Yeah. I think that there's, the mix, right? And I think that you do a great job of that, right? Where you bring in your insight as well. And I think that what makes a good conversation in the end anyway, people don't want to just hear one person talking the whole time. That's not a conversation. What I find though is like, man, there's so much value that I'm getting out of the interviewing that I have no regrets at all about starting a podcast. And it's something I really, really enjoy now.
I looked at it. So I started the thought process around a podcast back in COVID. And my first attempt at a podcast was called Advisors and Jeans. And I had 3 guests and I did it over Zoom and I recorded it and I put it out there. And for me, I started to get a little bit, there was other elements going on during COVID. My business, just blew up to different levels, clients coming in, moving markets like crazy. So I didn't have the time to focus on it. But then when I had the time to take a step back and focus on it, I said, I want to do this. And Luciano was part of it and Jess was part of it. And one of my biggest hangups was I have to be able to have the conversation. Like, what are we talking about? When are we? And I think it was Luciano said to me, he says, dude, just talk to people. Who gives a shit? Like, do you listen to podcasts? There's no agenda. Just talk. And I'm like, I could do that.
Yeah.
And ever since then, I've been having so much fun with it because I'm just like, I'm going to have a conversation.
Yeah. And tell me if this happens to you sometimes. You go do a little bit of prep work, maybe just like I'll have like a few questions that I prepare, but then the conversation just goes completely different. And now I'm not even looking at that thing anymore. I have no desire to ask any of the questions that I prepared to ask because the conversation went in a different direction. And I just became incredibly curious as to what this person thinks about a certain topic.
I found that the preparation that I do, like you came on, I want to know a little bit about you. I want to know a little bit about what your conversations are with your keynotes. I want to know a couple of the accolades that you have, because it also helps me to craft the questions and really dig down that rabbit hole when it needs to be dug down. And then when we pivot off of it, knowing a little bit more about you than what we've shared just face to face, but prior, also allows me to have a continuing conversation or maybe redirect the conversation to the next phase of where I was hoping that it would go.
Yeah.
But other than that, I don't want to be overly prepared. Because when I find I'm overly prepared, it's scripted. It's a little mechanic.
You sound like like robotic.
Right? Wait. Hold on. We have to talk about this because I wrote it down on my agenda for us to talk about.
I've been on those kind of podcasts as a guest.
Okay, we have to move on because it's time to talk about this. Wait, move on. I'm not done.
Like the transition is so strange, right? It's like, oh, thank you for that. And next question.
Yeah.
And they just go into the next question. But I think the way you're doing it is the best way to do it. It's just being organic and real and genuine. And I think that's what people want to hear. People don't want to hear scripted. Even when I do my keynotes, like I'll go on a stage, and I just did one in Toronto, and I have my slides and stuff, and I have the core message. But I remember like last minute, like a few seconds before I went on, I decided, I'm going to say this instead. Because I just felt right. It felt like that's going to be better for this audience. I'm going to tell that story instead of the one I originally planned. And then even in the middle of the keynote, I remember I said to them, I said, I was going to tell you something. I was not going to include this, but I think for this group, this is what's really going to be important to talk about. And I told a completely different story. So allow for, and I guess anybody listening, right? When you're even in conversations with people, when you're connecting with people, just don't be overly rigid. I think that when you can really tap into what the sense, the energy is of the people around you, just be fluid and don't be too overly attached to it going a certain way.
Well, and know your message.
Know your message.
What it is that you're talking about, because you can jump in and out of a new story because you know your message so well.
Right.
If you didn't know that message so well, it's not scripted, but it's rather just part of who you are and how you speak. That's your preparation.
Exactly.
Where a lot of people think winging it is their preparation.
Well, it's like, having a healthy balance between knowing your message, knowing what you are an expert on, and staying within that wheelhouse, but then how you communicate it, that can be fluid.
Mm-hmm.
How you deliver the message, you can adjust and tweak, because that shows your humanity balanced with your expertise. Because people want humans. They don't want to hear robots.
So what is the biggest thing that you are working on for 2025 as you continue down your path of helping other people get unstuck, making sure that you're not getting stuck? What are some of the things? What is the thing that you're working on for 2025 to better yourself, your business, your message, your voice, your life, your whatever?
Well, I think the thing that I'm really building towards is being able to effectively communicate a message that over the years has kind of come to the surface on its own. It kind of bubbled up naturally. So, I've coached a lot of people one-on-one. I've trained thousands. I've worked with people. Everyone tells me, hey, I feel stuck because of this, because of this, because of this. And I get curious. Okay, what's the common theme? What is the one thing that shows up in every person? If I could just point to one thing, and then I can help people to see that through the keynotes, through the workshops, through the book, through the TEDx. If I could just bring it all together for them, then I think I can make a meaningful difference. And the thing that I found is actually not what people would expect.
Childhood trauma. No.
It's definitely a factor. But what I find, Bobby, is that whenever people are feeling stuck, it's because they are thinking about themselves. It's a simple frame. Think about it like this. When you're feeling stressed, you're anxious, you're worried, you're caught in your own stuff. You're self-absorbed. You're thinking about you, me. But when you're at your very best, when you're happy, when you're content, you're not caught in thinking about yourself. You're fully connected to the person that you're with or the family or whatever. You're fully engaged in nature when you're outdoors. You're not caught in thoughts about you. So my core message that I'm hoping to share with the world is, can we get less self-absorbed? Can we be less caught in self-referential thinking and genuinely shift our attention onto the people around us and the impact that we want to make? Because that's where we are not only at our happiest, but we're also at our most productive. When people are in flow states and they're just, think of an NBA player on the court, right? That person is they're not thinking about them. They're not thinking about, what do I need to do next? How am I going to dribble? Or who am I going to pass to? It's just happening so naturally and organically. We want to be in that kind of state to be able to effectively impact the people around us. And I hope to be able to communicate that message with the world this year.
Well, you're right. I mean, it goes back to that simple, I coached my son baseball for a decade. And one of the things that we always brought up and spoke about with the kids was, what did Derek Jr. do when he struck out? He blows a bubble, it pops, he goes back into the dugout. You move on. Like, you got to move on.
Right.
Because when you do get so stuck in your own absorption, you're getting in your own way.
Exactly. We're getting in our own way. I think society has really moved towards this way of thinking. So in other words, if you really go back to human history, it used to be we were always in communities and groups. And so you'd never really think about yourself. But at times, what would end up happening is people would then oppress other people. And so there was no individual. Like, there was no ability to have my own self-empowered thinking. It just wasn't an option. But over time, we've actually shifted to the complete other side of the spectrum, which is everyone's the individual. Everyone, it's me. I post my photos on Instagram and everybody likes me and I love the attention. We've gone a bit too far, in my opinion, Bobby. We've gone a bit too far. And that's why we're seeing such a rise in mental health issues. They say in 2030, mental health issues is going to be the largest issue, more than any physical ailment. Mental health will be the biggest problem in human society.
Because our DNA is trying to bring us back to really who we are and what we are.
Which is connected to one another, which is not only thinking about how I can get what I want and how I can avoid my fears. Because when you're in that state, you are psychologically unsafe. You're in a mode of being the victim, right? When something doesn't go your way, right? I'm the victim of my circumstance. I'm the victim of this, and that. When you're in the victim mindset, you stay stressed, you stay in a state of anxiety. So what we need to do is be able to learn how to get out of only focusing on oneself and into thinking about the environment and the people of whom we're affecting. So I hope that people hear this and don't think I'm saying, don't take care of yourself. That's not what I'm saying. I am saying, take care of yourself so you can take care of the people who need you.
Right. And so you have the time to not downward spiral in your own shit.
Right.
That you have the moment to self-reflect and move past it and use some of the tools that you spoke about before to get out of it.
Exactly. And so that frame is one that I hope to be able to wake people up to this reality that so often we're falling into patterns of only only focusing on what we want, what I want. I mean, the cell phone, man. I mean, how often are you at a restaurant, Bobby, and you're seeing everybody on their phones, right? Why?
So speaking of that, how do you cut through the noise? How do you get your voice heard in a moment where people need to hear it most?
Well, the thing is, you got to meet people where they are, right, Bobby? I mean, you got to meet them where they are. And I can't, be standing on a mountaintop and everyone else is down and I'm trying to say, hey, come up here, Like, no, I have to come down to where they are and I have to meet them there. And then hopefully if they just take my hand, we can then walk this journey together, right? That's the way I see it. So I of course, have to meet people in these spaces of social media and being in that world to be able to hopefully get them to see my message in a way that makes a meaningful impact. So, creating a completely new channel and trying to deliver it through a way that no one else is going to listen is not going to work, right? So I have to meet them where they are, and hopefully that'll be enough.
And what keeps you motivated along the way to do that? To wake up every day and keep that energy? What's your motivating guiding light?
I'd say there's two things. One is on the personal side of caring for the people who I love, my daughter, my fiance, my mother, who need me. So that's the first one that comes to my mind, which is the one that touches obviously the heart the most because it's so close to you. And I'm sure anyone who's listening can relate. When you connect the dots to the people you love the most, it will give you the fuel you need. And then the second thing is I see suffering in the world and I hate it. And I want it to end. So much of our suffering is unnecessary. It's psychological suffering that's unnecessary. There is some suffering out there in the world that, hey, it's going to happen, right? Some physical suffering. And that's, of course, unfortunate. I wish I could change it. But the people who are suffering.
The dirty side of humanity.
Yeah. But the people who are suffering when they don't need to, it breaks my heart. I used to see it at Tesla. I see it with the work that I do now. people who are in states of anxiety and worry and depression and distress, and they're unable to cope with change and all that. I connect the dots each morning to being able to help those people and to reduce their suffering. So I'd say, yeah, it's the people who look to me and say, hey, you're going to be someone who provides and supports me in my life, my daughter, fiance, my mother. And then it's the people out there that I know need this help.
So if there's somebody here listening to this and they're feeling stuck, or they have an organization and they want you to be a keynote speaker or a speaker at that organization, how do they find you?
The best way would be through LinkedIn. They could just search my name, Jay Abbasi, Abbasi. A lot of people spell that last name wrong. LinkedIn, you'll find me, or jayabbasi.me is the website where people can find me as well.
Perfect. Well, this was awesome, man. I really appreciate you coming down and spending the time. That's a wrap. Jay Abbasi.
Thank you, Bobby. This was so much fun.